Hello everybody, and welcome to part 3 of how to set up an invasion game type tutorial. If you have yet to see part 2, click the little radar at the bottom there, and that will bring you to the second part of this tutorial. If you have not seen part 1, click the tools and place object on the right side there next to my budget, and that will bring you to part 1. Now, we've already covered how to set up the objectives for the individual phases. We also covered how to set up the respawn points and the initial points for invasion. Let's go ahead and cover some tricks that you can use for invasion and also what the other labels do. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull out a vehicle. Why not? Falcon. Sure. Now, there's tons of labels here for this game type, and we've covered most of them already, but I'm going to cover all of them piece by piece. Even the ones we've already covered, I'll go ahead and overlay on them. So, invasion just means that it's for invasion. It's just something to remind you. It does absolutely nothing. So if you tell it to be game specific true, you might want to set it to invasion, so when you're looking at it in the basic editor where you can see all game types, you can look at that and you'll remember, oh yeah, that's for the invasion game type. It's pretty much all it's there for. Invasion weapon and invasion vehicle kind of do the same thing. It's the opposite of invasion gate. Now I'll cover both invasion weapon, vehicle, and gates right after I'm done with the rest of these labels, so don't worry about me going heavily on the description. The objective is for setting up the phases, same with objective flag, that's for setting up bombs and capture the flag. The res phase 1, 2, and 3 is for setting up respawn points for the specific phase, and zone is for setting up respawn points for all phases. Now, platform and man cannon are not used for your game type. They are used specifically for the maps that Bungie already made, like the tower map that they made for invasion. That's specifically for man cannon. So do not worry about platform and man cannon because you do not use them. They don't do anything for your game type but screw it up, basically. Now, none. This is in case you have a game type, like this map is for another game type, and you have, let's say, a rock there, but you don't want that rock in your invasion game type, but you want it for every other game type. You set it up to none, and that'll make it not appear during invasion, but it'll show up for any other game type. Now, those are the different labels. Now, like I was saying about invasion and weapon, or invasion weapon and invasion vehicle and invasion gate. These are so you can make objects appear and disappear during the individual phases. Now, weapon and vehicle basically act the same way. I have heard that if you set it up for vehicle, it shows a waypoint over the object that appears. I have yet to have that happen to me, even when I set it to a vehicle, but apparently, quote unquote, that's what it's for. Really, they kind of do exactly the same thing. There's no difference, and what they do is after a certain phase, that object appears. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to vehicle because it's a vehicle, might as well. In spawn sequence 2. Now that means when I capture the territory for spawn sequence 1, beep beep beep, spawn sequence 1 over, da 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 da. Now spawn sequence 2. This vehicle will show up. It will not be there at all during the first spawn sequence, or first phase at all, but it will be there for phase 2 and phase 3. Because it appears after that fact. You can't make it appear for phase 2 and disappear for phase 3 because you can only set up one label for that. So make sure that whatever you make appear, you want to be there for the rest of the game. And it usually is only for the last 2 phases or only the last phase, so it's not like you have to worry too much. But that's what the spawn sequence 4 is. That says on this phase, show up. If you set it to be phase 1, well, what's the point? It's the start of the game. It's going to be there anyways then. So no point in setting up sequence 1. You only do it for sequence 2 or sequence 3. Now, gates is the complete opposite. It makes it go away, and you can set it up to be a vehicle, or what is more commonly used for is an actual gate. So you would have something like a 5x5 or, oops, get off of there. It loves walls apparently. So you would have something that's like a gate that's blocking something. Like, let's say there's a teleporter behind here. So this gate would disappear after phase 1. So you set up to be phase 1 and invasion gate. So when you capture this point, capture point, yay, that goes away. Now if you want it to be there till phase 2, you set it up to be phase 2. And so you can set it up to be a vehicle. So let's say you have a tank that you think would be awesome to have for the first part of the game, but it's going to be way too powerful for later on in the game. Set it up to be spawn sequence 2 or 3 and gate, or actually, you know, just set it up to 1. Now during the first phase, it's here, you can run around, blast whatever you want, but once that phase ends, it will disappear. And it will disappear if you're in it too, which is actually quite funny. You'll be driving around, and all of a sudden your tank goes away. It's like, huh, wait, what? So that's what you do to make weapons, walls, anything really go away after a set phase. So that's very useful. Let's get that away and this away. You can also set it up for weapons, like if you want sniper rifles, like maybe you have an armory in your base and you want like a rocket launcher to appear in the armory during the second phase. You can set up that for the game type invasion weapon, which for me, because like I said, I can't really tell a difference, at least nothing physically different happens in the game. I believe this is only for you to remember that it's a weapon, in case you ever forget the rocket launcher is a weapon. But you can set that up to show up during the second or third phase in your armory, so that the rocket launcher isn't there for the beginning of the game, but it's there for the end. That's one of the things you can set up. The one thing you do need to remember though, spawn time does apply. So let's say it's the beginning of phase 3, the rocket launcher is supposed to show up, but it's not there. Well, that's because 30 seconds have not passed, so technically it's respawning. It's just like if you set it up to be place at start false, it basically acts the same way. So if you want it to appear right when phase 3 shows up, what you need to do is you need to tell it to spawn time 1. The only problem is with vehicles and weapons is if you tell it to be spawn time 1, the moment this rocket launcher has been used up or somebody got killed with it, it pretty much respawns right away. Like, it shows up much quicker than it should. So you do got to be aware of that. Now if you want something like a wall to disappear, you gotta set it up to be on sequence 1, and I'll show you that in a second. I'm not gonna break this up into 2 parts. I was thinking I might break it up into part 3 and part 4, but I kind of already displayed the basics of it, so let's go ahead and go make them one large part. It might be longer than 10 minutes, but I think you guys will live. So let's go ahead and show you some cool techniques with this. How about? Hello everybody, I'm going to show you my first trick of invasion. There's 2 major ones because these 2 can pretty much help you do any other really cool trick in invasion. And this is the one that I quote unquote invented. I mean, somebody might have done it before, but I've never seen a tutorial on it before. I've never seen it done in a map. And it's called the replacing object technique, or the territory capture point, whatever you want to call it. I haven't really thought of a cool name. I really wanted to call it originally super epic awesomeness of cool, but you know, that was just too long and childish, so I decided to scrap that idea. But basically, I'll just let you see what it does. Right now I just have a territory, so let's go ahead and walk in here. Super fast territory. Whoa, it's blue! It was red, now it's blue! It is amazingly cool. Well, the reason why it was red and now blue is because it replaced the red with the blue. You can use this for a whole bunch of other things, and if you stick with me for a bit, I'll go ahead and show you how I set this up. It's a pretty cool technique, so see you then. Hello everybody, now that you've seen my replacement trick, which is actually a trick that I've never seen anybody really do before in an invasion map. I mean, somebody might have already done it, but you know, this is a cool technique that you can use in your map to make it actually physically look like the blue team has taken over a key point in your map. Now you do got to be aware that this does take up twice as many pieces, and what I mean is look at this. I have a red pyramid and a blue pyramid. I need 2 pyramids just to do this one technique, and obviously because of that you want to use pieces that you have a lot of, as well as pieces that aren't expensive. Never use pyramids. The only reason I'm using it is because, I mean, look at my budget. I have 9,500. Obviously, because I'm not really making a map, I don't care about money. But for you guys who are trying to make big invasion maps, don't use expensive building pieces because they're expensive and you only get 12 building pieces. Use something that's cheaper. Like, for example, you can use a building block. I mean, these things do actually change color. It's amazing. So you can use these to emulate it. If you want to be a little bit more interesting or more visibly noticeable, you could use a door. You only get 50 of these, but they are only 10 each. You can have these changed because that is pretty visible as well. You can, if you want to be a little bit more expensive, you can use antennas. Now you got 100 of these, but they are 50 each, but they do have a lot of color to them. So if you have the money, you can use antennas too. Now to actually do the switching technique, you gotta set up, well, first off, for my map I have just a initiation point here, but you gotta have a territory for, or assault, or capture the flag, depending on whatever game type you have. For me, I'm just using a territory for phase 1. Because if you don't have that, obviously you're not going to be switching from phase 1 to phase 2. Now for this, what you need to do is change it from weapon or vehicle. They do the same exact thing. I just chose weapon. And spawn sequence 2. That means when phase 2 starts, this object will appear. Now you gotta make sure that your spawn time is not never. By default, all building objects are never because you never need to spawn them. They're blocks. So you want to make sure that you have it set up to be 1, because if you don't have it set up to that, it will never show up and there'll just be an empty gap wherever your object was supposed to replace it. That also caused that lag that you saw when I captured the point. There was nothing there for a second and then it was there. Well, that's why. See, that's why you also got to make sure that it's not huge pieces like this, because if it's like a door frame or just a small block or an antenna, that's not right in front of your face when you're capturing the point, you don't even notice. And even if you do notice, it's usually such a small object that you're like, oh, whatever. But if it's a huge object like this, I could literally have walked right in here and then gotten killed because the object spawned on me. So you got to be aware of that. The second object you want to set up to be spawn sequence 1 and gate. That means after sequence 1, it disappears. Now if you're doing this obviously for sequence 2 to 3, you make it 2 and the other one 3. But just for mine, I'm making it 1 to 2. So you gotta make sure it's 1 and gate. That way this disappears the moment that sequence is done. Next, you overlay them exactly on top of each other. Now I use edit coordinates because there's no easier way to get exactly the same exact spot than edit coordinates. Just make sure they're both edit coordinate. You will get this weird glitchy lighty textury error thing, but that's just because it's 2 objects on top of each other. When you're actually playing Invasion, because of the way you're setting it up, you'll never have these 2 objects on top of each other at the same exact time, so you never have to worry about that in game. It's only in Forge that you'll ever see that error. Now that's how you set up the replacing object trick. Hopefully you guys use it in your map for just showing visibly that you captured a territory, or use it for something else. Who knows? There's tons of possibilities with this technique, so can't wait to see what you guys have done. If you wish to see how to make a destroyed gate look, watch the rest of this tutorial. So that's what's coming up next, so I shall see you then. So now that I've shown you that cool trick for replacing objects so that you can make it look like you captured a territory and it's now your team's, let's go ahead and see what the exploding door or exploding gate trick is. Now, you've probably seen this in invasion maps if you played custom invasion before. It's quite a common trick and it's very easy to do. I have this really awesome gate, which, by the way, for those of you who always wonder how I make really cool looking things like this only cost me $50. So it is extremely easy to make extremely cheap, really cool pieces. You just gotta make sure that you spread your pieces out. I mean, some of you might be saying, oh, this isn't cool at all, but you know, I think it actually looks really cool for a gate for $50. So let's go ahead and show off the exploding gate, and hopefully I don't get killed. See, now it looks like the walls have been blown in, the pillar from the center is knocked down, and there's some rubble, because usually you'd build this on an earthy terrain, not ground, so some rubble there. So, you know, it looks like the gate was blown in. So let's go ahead and check out how that was actually done step by step, so you guys can see how I built that gate and also how I got it to look exploded in, so you can use that technique in your own maps. So let's learn how I made that exploding wall look. Well, I already have the exploded wall here. Now, the reason why I already have this done is just to make this tutorial go a little bit quicker. And you want to make the exploded part first. And the reason why is the exploded part, usually like this one, has pieces that are at weird angles, rocks and that kind of stuff laying around. So you want to make that first before you make the constructed wall, because that will get in the way, trust me, and you'll see in a bit. Now, each of these pieces you want to make sure it has a respawn time of 1 for first, because if it's set up to never like they are right now, they will not show up when you do the change in sequence. The second thing you want to do is set it up to be the phase that you want. So spawn sequence 2, game label needs to be vehicle or weapon, because those are the two that make it appear at that phase. And you got to do that for each one. So if you have 20 pieces for your wall, it's gonna be 20 pieces you're gonna have to do this for. So do be conscious that it is going to take a while for you to set it up, depending on how complicated your destroyed structure is. Also, you usually want, if you're doing something like this, you usually only want 1 bomb placement on that phase, because if you have 2 bomb placements, then it's going to look a little weird that this wall is exploded when I blew up a wall over there. So do be aware of that as well. It's your choice, you can do it either way. Now, I've got all these set up to be weapon phase 2 and spawn time 1. That will allow all these objects to appear right after phase 1 is over. Now, for phase 1, I want a completed wall. So I already put this piece out here because I didn't want to align the height and all that. So let's go ahead and make sure that that's fitting. So this is where the center wall is going to be. And you don't need spawn time set up, but you do need to make it spawn sequence 1 in invasion gate. Next, you need to fill this with some objects. Now, I used 5x5s for this and 4x4s for that. They're obviously not the same piece, but the reason why is these 5x5s are huge and they fit this area beautifully. But I didn't need that much space covered. So they look the same, but they're not the same. So you can use techniques like that. They don't actually have to be the same exact piece for the exploded wall. I mean, heck, I'm not even using the same pieces for this. I'm using a pillar and a ramp for that to emulate some of these extra pieces there, because there's no way I'm going to manually construct that. So let's go ahead and put that in here at a good height and there, and make sure that you set it up to be invasion gate spawn sequence 1, just like this is set up. And then I'm gonna put one more in here. You usually want to make, if you're making patterns like that, you want to make it the same distance. A little bit more over. There we go. Whoa. Forge wanted to grab me to the ground there. I've actually been killed that way, like it sucked me into the ground because I was too close. And then, of course, you want to make it 1 and gate. The only thing left is setting up your bomb placements. So, for that, all you need, as you have already seen in the earlier tutorial, you need an objective for phase 1. This is where the bomb will go, and obviously it's going to be in front of the gate. If you really wanted to, you could stick it on the gate. You just got to make sure that the area surrounds it, but I personally prefer just laying it on front of the gate unless it needs to, like, it looks better. So it all depends on how your gate is designed and what you want the look to be. And then of course you need, that's another thing, if you guys haven't noticed that, if you sink it down in the ground like that, when you hit up once, it shoots it really high, and so it takes a while to bring it back to the ground. So sequence 1, and you set it up to be objective flag. Now you got a place to grab the bomb and put the bomb. Now those are the two techniques that I wanted to show you, the exploding gate and the replacement technique to make objects replace another object. You can use these two different forms of techniques to make countless different kinds of maps. You can make maps that are challenge maps, where the map literally changes, puzzle maps. Maybe you just want to make it a weird funky map where somebody carries the bomb to one end, it blows up. Now they got to carry the bomb back, but the whole maze is different. You can do things like that with these techniques. It's all up to your imagination. There's tons of stuff you can do with Invasion, and I really hope that this tutorial helped you. As always, subscribe, comment below, and I will see you all later. This is Gamertag Your Willy signing off.
Bomb taken.
Run, 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 run. Ow, my face.